Hello, you're watching the special edition of Context, and I'm Orkhan Amashov here to ask relevant questions in pursuit of illuminating answers. Well, it now appears that the developments in the Middle East have crossed the point of no return. The United States is officially and openly part of the conflict, and by the looks of it, there's more to come. President Donald Trump has announced that the United States has carried out direct and successful strikes on three major Iranian nuclear sites: Fordow, the most important one, Natanz, and Isfahan. Although many had already assumed that there is a close coordination between the United States and Israel in this unfolding confrontation, this episode marks a very significant moment, a direct American military intervention placing an entirely new complexion on the conflict. Fordow, often described as a crown jewel of Iran's nuclear program, is said to have been devastated. President Trump, striking triumphant tone, declared that Fordow has now gone and warned that any Iranian retaliation would be met with further precision strikes. What is very certain that this is all massively important and undeniably consequential. Joining me now in the studio is Oubai Shahbandar, Anewz Washington correspondent, who happens to be in Baku today. Oubai, welcome to our studio, and let's have a chat about this very consequential development. First of all, it's very consequential and important, and we are in the realm of breaking news.
Yes.
Every single day, something unthinkable, something massively important happening. And what's about the timing? And I mean, what happened on the 13th of June was unexpected. An element of surprise was present in relation to this particular development as well.
Well, let's look at how we got here. Now, President Trump, with his authority as the commander-in-chief of all U.S. military forces, gave the extraordinary order to launch for the first time direct American strikes on Iranian territory, launching these B-2 bombers. These are stealth bombers that can carry a significant amount of weaponry, specifically the GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrator. That is a 14,000 kilogram bomb of which the B-2 bomber can only carry two of them. That's how heavy
only the United
they
States
are.
is capable of that.
And
right?
only the United States has this weapon in their arsenal. And only the United States has these long-range bombers. Get this, they launched from their air base in Missouri, in the central United States, and then refueled in the air, struck their targets in Fordow, which is right outside the Iranian city of Qom, and Natanz and Isfahan, and then flew back, refueled in the air, and then landed back in Missouri. That is an extraordinary military reach, of which the United States is very unique in its capacity to launch these strikes halfway across the world from an air base in Middle America. What is so unique about this conflict right now is that President Trump released a statement saying the strikes were successful. Around a dozen of these 14-ton massive ordnance penetrators were dropped on Fordow and the other sites, as well as a number of cruise missiles, some of which were launched from submarines that were operating in the region, destroying some of the air defenses or military sites guarding these sensitive nuclear facilities. Now, Fordow is buried deep beneath the mountains, and there have been questions on whether the Israeli Air Force, the Israeli military, had the capacity and the necessary weaponry to penetrate Fordow. And that is where the most advanced nuclear enrichment centrifuges are based. And that's why Fordow was such a major target. Now, going back to President Trump's statement following the strikes, he signaled that this is a precision strike. This is not meant for regime change. And I think that was a very deliberate political move by President Trump, sending the message to Ayatollah Khamenei, the supreme leader of Iran, that, hey, we, the United States, do not want to lead, this is not meant to be part of a wider conflict. Now, of course, that's the message from the administration, right, in Washington. The question is that how will the Iranians react? So far, we've only seen an additional volley of missiles from Iran striking Haifa and Tel Aviv in Israel. We have not yet seen the feared Iranian retaliation on American military bases in the Middle East and the Arabian Gulf. And that can come at much shorter notice because those bases are, in some instances, just minutes away from Iran, and Iran can launch its short-range cruise missiles, and doesn't have to use its longer-range ballistic missiles.
I just go back to what happened just a few hours ago. What do you think triggered it, or was it pre-planned? Because there was an element of surprise on the 13th of June. Because, and there was an element of surprise in relation to what happened a couple of hours ago. What is it? Was it nuclear talks? Because according to what we have heard, Iran had not changed its position. It remained true to the original precepts of its position. Was it something else? Was it nature of Iranian retaliation against Israel, or was it?
Well, President Trump said that. Well, he said that he wanted 2 weeks, and within 48
space,
right, and that those 2 days were within those 2 weeks. So he wanted to essentially maintain a level of strategic ambiguity in order to catch Iran by surprise. But we also saw reports in the preceding 48 hours that the White House had sent a message to Ali Khamenei, the leader of Iran, that if he would send a high-level envoy, that the Americans would also send perhaps even the vice president alongside with Steve Witkoff, President Trump's Middle East envoy, to continue negotiations. According to some of the reports that we saw in the press in Washington, that because the Iranians could not reach Ali Khamenei in time, because he's in a bunker. He's in a bunker somewhere. He's not using a phone. He's not using any electronic communication. He's just using a courier. That Washington was not able to get a response from Tehran to this perhaps 11th hour effort by the Trump administration to prevent this conflict from escalating any further. Now, President Trump has made it clear that he does believe the intelligence that the Israelis have shared with the U.S., that the Iranians were indeed taking new and novel steps to expand their nuclear weapons program. Particularly, he has focused on the weaponization and the triggering mechanisms that would have to be outfitted to highly enriched uranium that could then be placed on ballistic missiles by Iran. So clearly, President Trump and American intelligence shared the viewpoint of the Israeli intelligence that there was a certain level of immediacy to Iran's nuclear weapons research and specifically the weaponization of highly enriched uranium. So and we've heard President Trump, both before he ordered these strikes on Iran and in the immediate aftermath, that his primary objective is to ensure that Iran does not gain a nuclear weapon.
And does this attack actually guarantee the fulfillment of that objective? Because the scale and scope are massive, absolutely massive. Those three sites, in particular Fordow, absolutely key to Iran's nuclear program. Do you think after what has happened, it would be fair to say that Iran is no longer a nation which could be realistically deemed a nation of nuclear aspirations for the time being? That
is the key question. That is the million-dollar question. Now, it's perhaps too early to see to have a very specific and accurate battle damage assessment. But what we are seeing from preliminary reports coming from the Israeli side and the American side is that without Fordow, without the advanced centrifuges that are required to enrich uranium and to process plutonium, and without Isfahan and Natanz, it'll be extremely difficult for the Iranian government, perhaps for the next decade plus, to make any more advancements in its nuclear weapons program. So I think we would be safe to say that the nuclear ambitions of Iran have suffered a severe setback. Now, we are seeing some reports coming from the Iranian government trying to downplay this attack, but in terms of the effects that were achieved. But look, with Fordow, it took the Iranians a decade plus to build Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan. It is certainly devastating, and perhaps what is even more devastating is the fact that the Israeli Mossad, the intelligence service, has managed to assassinate around a dozen of Iran's most highly sought after and prized nuclear scientists, without whom you don't have a nuclear program. So both in terms of the knowledge capacity and in terms of the infrastructure, the Iranian nuclear program has suffered a severe setback that could perhaps take it multiple decades to recover from. And we are seeing also reports from Israel that, hey, if the Iranians are going to try to rebuild, well, it'll just be even easier to just launch intermittent strikes as the Iranian government tries to rebuild its nuclear program in the future. So we are now at a much different place where President Trump has sent the message to Iran that let's go back to the negotiating table now that your nuclear ambitions have suffered such a significant military setback. The question is, will Iranian leaders take that message from President Trump and go back to the negotiating table, or will we see a significant escalation which would result, of course, from Iranian military retaliation?
In your judgment, what President Trump did, in his understanding, is a peace enforcement measure, effectively a measure taken to ensure that Iranians agree to the terms proposed by the United States on this subject. Is that the way you look at it? And also, in terms of retaliatory capabilities of Iranian side, what else is there for them? Because they have been preparing for this situation for some considerable time. Yeah. What is there in their arsenal that could damage Israel or American military bases in the region?
Well, from the geopolitical side, I think it is very notable that the message coming from President Trump is that he wants to continue talks, that he has not shut the door to a diplomatic solution, and that the messaging here seems to be that, hey, we as the United States do not want to get embroiled into a wider conflict in the Arabian Gulf and in the Middle East. So this seems to be President Trump's attempts to give the Iranians what is called in Washington the off-ramp. Hey, take this olive branch. Yes, this strike is going to significantly damage your military and nuclear ambitions, but let's sit down and talk instead of letting this conflict play out even further, which has proven very devastating, of course, for the Iranian government, the Iranian military, with a number of these cities being struck, by the Israeli military.
So you already explained this particular part, and my question is going to be related to that. What if Iran retaliates and targets Gulf region and American military bases? What will be the reaction from the United States, given that what happened a few hours ago was already quite devastating?
Yes.
What will be the next? What will be the next unthinkable?
Well, that scenario, a scenario where, let's imagine the Iranian Revolutionary Guards launch cruise missiles, or launch a suicide boat, or launch a proxy attack via militias in Iraq or by Lebanese Hezbollah that then kill American soldiers and American bases that are based in Jordan, in Iraq, in the United Arab Emirates, Kuwait, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and in Bahrain, where the Fifth Fleet is based. Well, President Trump has vowed massive retaliation if American soldiers or civilians or diplomats are killed. And then we enter into a whole new, extremely dangerous phase.
Indeed. And let's talk about the reaction of the regional actors, Turkey, Saudi Arabia. All of them, they have their own specific relations with Iran and Israel. Naturally, I think it would be fair to say no country in the region, including Turkey and Saudi Arabia and others, want to see nuclear Iran. I mean, this is out of the question. But the reality is that they have been criticizing Israel for unilateral action. They were accusing Israel of acting in a unilateral manner. How concerned do you think are they by virtue of what has happened?
Well, we have seen reports that the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, which is the historical adversary of Iran in the region, although they do have normalized diplomatic relations, was that Riyadh would then pursue its own nuclear program to balance out Iran's nuclear ambitions if Iran were to build a nuclear bomb. And that's the thing. Once you cross that threshold, once you are able to actually build a nuclear bomb and nuclear warhead, particularly a number of them, even if it's a small number, and you're able to outfit that warhead to a ballistic missile, then any conventional strike then goes out the window as an option, just because of the fear of nuclear retaliation. Remember, Israel is a very small country, and just one nuclear warhead outfitted on a ballistic missile launched by Iran would wipe out Israel. Of course, then Israel would then launch its own retaliation, nuclear retaliation, that could also wipe out Iran, given the undeclared nuclear weapons capabilities that Israel has. And that is not lost on other countries in the region, like Saudi Arabia and Turkey, regional powers that do not have their own nuclear weapons program. And one of the lessons learned here also is that if you do not have a ballistic missile program in the Middle East, you are on the menu. That is a powerful capability and deterrent that certainly would sets countries that have them apart from those that do not. So I think Turkey and Saudi Arabia, who would view an Iranian nuclear weapons program as a threat to their own regional interests, are also concerned with the Israeli response. Of course, the Israelis have gone back and said, well, this is an existential threat for us, that we have no choice because of Iran's vow to destroy the Jewish state of Israel. Now, we have seen, of course, publicly both Turkey and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, as well as other Arabian Gulf countries, publicly condemn the Israeli strikes on Iran's nuclear program.
There are different layers of actually being concerned. Yes. One is, in a diplomatic jargon language, you may be concerned about what has happened. You may condemn what has happened, and then this condemnation could actually transform into practical actions on the ground. I think that in the case of Turkey and Saudi Arabia, the likelihood of this transmogrifying into practical action seems to be increasingly unlikely. And one more question about Russia. Russia and Iran are allies, of course, but Russia has not been very supportive of Iran in real sense of the word. What do you make of the posture maintained by Moscow so far?
Well, I think it was very interesting that we've seen also talks between Washington and Moscow over the conflict with Iran. And it's clear here that Russia is really prioritizes improving relations with the Trump administration and with the United States writ large, rather than coming to the aid of Iran. Of course, Iran has provided those Shahed kamikaze drones that they've helped produce for Russia that they use on the battlefield in Ukraine. And the Russians have publicly come out in defense of Iran in its conflict with Israel. But let's not forget, Russia also has strategic partnership and important relations with Israel as well. And couple that with the fact that Moscow wants to improve relations with Washington, you really aren't seeing anything beyond the diplomatic rhetoric in terms of support, and Iran really is on its own.
Well, indeed, yeah. Russia also probably, in a sense, is engaged in its own geopolitical balancing out, the very fashionable term that everybody's using these days. And thank you very much, Ruby. Thank you very much indeed for your time and for your analysis. Indeed, we're going through very interesting times, and we're
in the thick of it.
Yeah, indeed, we're in the thick of it. And also the next, what is the next unthinkable, really? Because over the past couple of months, since President Trump's re-election, many developments have taken place. December, the change in Syria, that was an important development. I don't think anybody had been really amongst
Just a few months ago,
had been expecting it. And then developments regarding Ukraine. President Trump changed the debate about Ukraine. Now there is a talk. Some progress has been attained. Very minuscule perhaps, but it's still underway. The relations between Russia and the United States have changed. Turkey and Israel are in the process of talking to each other. Perhaps the confliction regarding Syria will be attained. Massive developments taking place in the Gulf region. President Trump's 3-day trip is being discussed until this day. And of course, the latest developments regarding Iran and Israel is also a massive, colossal development with portentous consequences to follow, perhaps. Thank you very much indeed, Ruby. Thank you very much indeed. Well, the strikes on Fordow and other nuclear sites mark a significant moment, as we have said earlier, and the open US involvement is now confirmed beyond any doubt. And it looks like that the whole affair is not over yet. The risks are immense, or they are gargantuan, but so too is the weight of miscalculation. You've been watching the special edition of Context, and see you very soon indeed.